let's start. So it's time for our last speaker today before competition announcement. So let's meet Anthony Goldbloom, as CEO and founder of Kaggle. So before founding Kaggle, Anthony worked in macroeconomic modeling field for Australian government and also as journalism intern for The Economist magazine. So I've read that Anthony actually loves kitefall racing, and he hopes for a Kaggle competition to predict wind better. So today, Anthony will share the lessons he learned from Kaggle's community. So welcome Kaggle's founder and CEO, Anthony Goldbloom.
Hey everyone, I assume you can all hear me? Yes. Yep, excellent. Okay, very good. So I was going to talk about lessons I'd learned, or lessons we had learned from the Kaggle community, but I think you have people like Pavel and Gilberto and others who are much better. I got a bit intimidated about talking about that topic. So what I'm actually going to talk to you about today is a little bit of a continuation from Walter's talk. So Walter gave you a bit of a sense for some of the some of the different things that we have on Kaggle now. I wanted to talk to you about, give you a little bit of insight into how we do things at Kaggle. So you've probably noticed that we've expanded to Kaggle kernels and the public data platform. Why did we do this, and how do we think about Kaggle? And then both for competitions and for other parts of Kaggle, the kinds of things that you can expect to see over the next few years. But by the way, am I talking too quickly, or is this okay? Just thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, good. I sometimes worry I talk too quickly, particularly in an audience where people have different languages. So let me switch over to a screen share, and we are going to try and leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. So as I understand it, people are going to ask questions on Slack, and then those questions will be repeated back to me. All right. So screen share. This is, we normally make the joke at Kaggle that we may be solving AI, but we're not quite there on AV yet, but this is working very well. Okay, you can all see my screen, right? Is my screen coming up? Thumbs up? Yep, very good, okay. So first of all, I just want to give you a bit of a sense for how we describe Kaggle. So, we started as machine learning competitions, but as you've seen, we're trying to branch out and become, offer the data science community more and more. The way we think about this is, Stack Overflow was the first software engineering community, and they started with question answering, and they stayed with question answering. They do an amazing job of question answering. But as a result, you have other services that come up. You have GitHub that does code collaboration. You have Atlassian that does developer tools. And our aim with Kaggle is to try and give our community as much as possible in one place and have those services be linked together. Competitions and kernels are linked, data sets and kernels are linked. Eventually we want data sets and competitions are linked. We think we can offer something much, much richer as a result of combining things together. So you're all probably most familiar with competitions. This is, and I think there'll be a competition that many of you are competing in associated with this this event. I'm going to give you a bit of an insight into sort of how we decided that we wanted to launch other services, and in particular Kaggle kernels. So this is one of our getting started competitions. It's the MNIST dataset, which is a very famous benchmark computer science dataset. And this competition really just exists as a way for people to get started with Kaggle. A relatively easy computer vision problem to get started with. And you've probably all noticed this from competing in competitions, but the forums are incredibly active. You see, you've always seen people are very generous in sharing ideas and sharing tips. How to use convolutional neural networks in Weaker or Keras, or whatever it might be. And you've all probably seen how engaged the forums are. You have 23 replies, 13 replies, 5 replies, 14 replies. So given that so many people come to Kaggle to learn and improve and get new ideas, you would think that the most valuable thing that anyone could do is not just share ideas, but share code. But what we would notice is that when people shared code, you'll notice this is the only one that has no comments, right? So what's this should be very valuable. He's sharing code, and what a great way to learn. The reason you get no one engaging with this is because, okay, so he's shared his Python neural network code. Maybe it's written in Python 2.7, maybe it's 3.5. So you need the same version of Python. You need the same libraries, so Pandas, Scikit-learn, Matplotlib, NumPy. NoLearn and Lasagna. Lasagna had an API change, so you have to make sure you have at least the same version of Lasagna, or the version that is the same, with the common API that this person is using. You need the same data attached. So it's not very fun to spend 4 hours replicating his code. And so the whole idea with Kaggle kernels was to give the community a one-click way to take somebody else's code. So for those of you, I think most of you have probably seen it. For those of you who haven't, rather than, if you use Jupyter Notebooks, for instance, rather than having it local on your machine, it is in the cloud and hosted. You can either make your code private or public. Probably a lot of you have discovered this nice little feature here. We have a limited number of GPUs available. You can install your own packages, etc. And so when you run a commit and run a kernel, what's happening is it's basically storing the code, the Docker container, and the connection to the data. And so those are the 3 things. You've basically versioned the code, the execution environment, and the data connection. And if you have a look here, so these are the kernels that people have shared on the same competition. Let's click on this one. This one's been around for a while. It's very popular. You can see 182 comments on it. So whereas before when somebody tried to share code, there were no comments, now there are 182 comments on this particular kernel. Notice here it's been forked over 2,300 times. And all I need to do to get his code running, again, I don't have to replicate the environment and so on and so forth. I just hit fork notebook. I don't know if I actually hit it. I think I did not. I just hit fork notebook, and I get his code running in an environment immediately with all the same packages, all the same data that he has. And so none of this playing around for many, many hours trying to get the code working. So that's the idea behind Kaggle kernels. Many of you who were around when we launched it, it was a very controversial feature. Because all of a sudden, you would have people sharing, quite good competition submissions in Kaggle kernels. And so if you are just below the score of that kernel, then somebody sharing a kernel means that lots of people all of a sudden get ahead of you on the leaderboard. So it was quite a controversial thing in the community when we first launched it. I'd be interested in feedback, maybe via the Slack channel. Our sense is that it has become a very popular part of Kaggle, and that it has allowed people to play with each other's code and learn much more than they would have otherwise. So we're certainly proud of the amount. Like if you look at how much code was shared, either through sharing GitHub links or forum posts before Kaggle kernels versus after, it's made a huge difference. The reason we launched the public data platform was a couple of reasons. The biggest one was that Kaggle kernels took off like crazy in competitions, and we wanted people to be able to do more with Kaggle kernels. And so the whole idea behind the public data platform was not to be limited by the data sets that we happen to put up through competitions, but really to allow the community to play around with data sets, to share and collaborate with others on data sets that the community finds interesting. And this was a way to massively increase the amount of stuff that people could do on Kaggle and do with Kaggle kernels. This has been successful. I mean, we have over 7,000 data sets now. We actually have many more, but we've kind of done a big purge of some of the very low quality ones, or not done a purge, but turned them private as opposed to making them public, just to try and keep the listing higher quality. And so, now we're at the point where there's just about not a major kind of topic that you could be interested in. In the introduction was mentioned, I like wind data. Well, there happens to be quite a lot of wind and weather data, including some maintained by me. And so I can find a community of people also interested in wind and weather data on the public data platform. So so I'm very proud of the fact that, though we started as competitions, we have been successful in launching some newer areas. The newest, of course, is Kaggle Learn, which I think Walter spoke about. The idea with Kaggle Learn is to basically give the community a very bite-sized introduction to a topic. So not to teach you all the theory and everything that one might need to know on a topic, but really teach you enough. You can go through a Udacity course and get 6 months of lectures. The idea here is in 2 hours to get the basics of a topic so that it's enough to get you started. And then you can go off either to Kaggle competitions, to the data sets, and play around with the basis that you have from that first 2 hours. Now I want to talk to you a bit about what's coming next. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to stop screen sharing. Actually, I'm going to stop screen sharing from now, but I will screen share again shortly. So some of the things that we have coming that I think hopefully you'll be excited about. I think Walter spoke a little bit about the plan for some of the things we're thinking about with competitions. The biggest thing we're thinking about with competitions is trying to really have robust support for kernels-only competitions or code competitions, where people compete using code rather than downloading the test set and then uploading the score on the test set. Now, the reason, there's a whole lot of reasons we want to do that. It increases the range of competitions that we can run. So it's always been hard for Kaggle to run time series competitions, for instance. Imagine competitions to predict the stock market where you'll constantly have a stream of new data flowing in. With kernels competitions, when you're contributing your code, then we can have the data sort of constantly feeding through to the to the algorithm and have kind of very exciting real-time scoring and things like that. Makes it easier for us to solve leakage issues. So you hate leakage, we hate leakage, everyone hates leakage, and makes it much easier to refresh the test data set if leakage is discovered when people are submitting code. Replaces two-stage competitions. So two-stage competitions, as a lot of you have probably realized, the support in the platform is, it's not the most robust support. It becomes much easier to run two-stage competitions once we have kernels competitions. And just for those of you who haven't seen a two-stage competition, this is a situation where we're worried about hand labeling, where we're worried about, let's say it's $1 million prize to diagnose some medical illness. Well, that becomes profitable for a doctor to go through and spend the afternoon evaluating all the cases. Rather than, we obviously don't want that. And so we've got this two-stage competition where we release the second test data set for a very limited time at the end of the competition. We won't have to do that with kernels competitions. We can just sort of in the background evaluate the new holdout set. And give the score. Then there are some exciting areas, constrained compute competitions. So a lot of times competitions are won by stacking together many ensembles. That becomes harder when we run competitions that have constrained compute. Not only that, one of the hot areas is we all carry around these things, and one of the hot areas of machine learning is getting very powerful algorithms onto devices. Whether it be, we ran the TSA competition, that they want that algorithm to run on device. You've got cell phones that do amazing things these days. You know, how powerful can we make an algorithm that runs on a cell phone? And we can simulate those sort of compute constraints through kernels competitions. And then finally, I don't want to over-promise on this, but this is something that we hope to eventually get to, are some of the newer areas of machine learning, like reinforcement learning. We can do much better. We can have support for reinforcement learning with competitions, with kernels competitions. And also another very exciting area that I know a lot of people on our team are excited about is this idea of agent versus agent competitions, where you have a competition where you're building an agent and you compete against somebody else's agent. So these are all things these are all ideas in the air. I don't want to. I think they're very exciting. I don't want to make out like they're coming tomorrow, but they're things that that are in our plans. So then talk a bit about Kaggle kernels and the kinds of things you might expect. So first of all, we are strong believers in that the future of data science machine learning will all be done using a cloud-based Workbench. I think there are two reasons for this. A lot of you have probably used Google Docs versus Microsoft Word. If you're collaborating with somebody else, it is so much nicer to do it on, in the cloud using something like Google Docs. Doing it with Microsoft Word and exchanging via email, is a real pain. Similar idea, obviously, applies to data science. So both commenting and code reviewing somebody else's work, as well as forking and extending it. The other thing that makes data science in the cloud very powerful is this idea that data science workloads are very bursty, right? 1 minute you're doing exploratory analysis, the next minute you want access to a TPU or a GPU because you're training a very, 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 very heavy deep neural network. The cloud is perfect for that. It allows you to scale up and down your compute. And so we plan to make the collaboration features in Kaggle kernels much stronger, and we plan to much better support sort of bursty up and down workloads, as well as again, I don't want to promise this this is not coming tomorrow, but we will eventually. We are planning on support for you've seen GPUs. We will eventually get TPUs into Kaggle kernels as well. That's one of the really nice things about being at Google. Is we can make those. Google's investing a lot in machine learning infrastructure, and this is infrastructure that we can make available to the community. So those are a couple of things. One further out thing I'm very excited about with Kaggle kernels. I don't know how many of you have seen Kite, which is a software engineering, like intelligent software. They call it a software engineering co-pilot. So when you try and do tab completion, for instance, it gives you the most likely thing that you might want to complete with, as opposed to an alphabetic. Typically when you do tab completion, you get the alphabetically ordered list. I think there's lots of very smart things that we can do with Kaggle kernels around that to make it a really amazing environment for doing data science, whether it be for competitions or we have private kernels now. We have private data sets, so also useful for doing non-Kaggle related projects. The public data platform. So one of the big things we want to achieve here is we probably all had the experience of going out and trying to find a data set. If you're in the US and you want to find census data, you sort of have to trawl through the US Census Bureau. If you want to find unemployment data, you have to go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There's no one place to go and get data sets. We are hoping for the Kaggle data platform to be the one place where you go to find data sets on whatever topic you like. So for competitions, hopefully this is an interesting source of data sets to join to for the competitions that permit it, but also for projects outside of Kaggle, whether they be professional or hobby projects. The idea is that you don't need to trawl around. Our hope is that you don't need to trawl around the web to find the data set that you're looking for, but you can come to Kaggle and have confidence that you'll find the data set. Where some of the things we're looking at working on are verified data sets programs. So a lot of us we want to trust that the data set on Kaggle is actually the data set that we're interested in. Some of you are probably on Twitter. There's the blue tick that they have, or Reddit have proofs before somebody does an AMA. We're looking at an equivalent concept for data sets so that you can start to trust the data sets on the public data platform. And then eventually, you know what, we want this to be really intelligent, like Kaggle kernels, where we want to suggest code completions to you. We want to be able to suggest, you know, you upload a data set maybe for a work project or a hobby project or a competition project. We want to be able to recommend data sets that could be good to join to. So turn our public data platform into a graph. And then finally, Kaggle Learn, I mentioned, is very new. There's a lot of places to learn about data science. You know, Udacity, Coursera, DataCamp, you know, many more. Galvanize. I'm not sure what's in Eastern Europe. I'm sure there are lots of options as well. Our aim with Kaggle Learn is to be not to keep you on the side, as I mentioned, for 6 months, but to give you bite-sized courses that if there's a topic that you want to learn, you know you can find it on Kaggle Learn. At the moment, you know, it's very new. There aren't very many topics, but we're planning some advanced topics pretty soon, things like GANs. You know, we're looking at a GANs, you know, bite-sized GANs course very soon to get you started on GANs. And then eventually, we do want to hook this up to Kaggle kernel. So if we see someone stuck, they're trying to train a convolutional neural network, they seem to be stuck, you know, along with the error message that somebody keeps getting, you know, we'd love to be able to say, hey, you know, we notice you're stuck on this step. You know, take this 1 hour, you know, go through this 1 hour bite-size tutorial, and it might help you solve your issues. So, yeah, that's all to say that we have a lot of ambitious things coming, and hopefully some of the things I mentioned are exciting to you. I think I'll stop talking there and make sure we leave time for questions. So is there somebody who can field the questions?
Yes, I'm here. So we've got actually plenty of questions. So the first one from Abhishek. Since Kaggle is a Google company now, will we soon see TPU support in kernels?
Yes, I don't want to promise too soon, but yes, that is the plan. And just more generally, the kinds of things that you can expect. I mean, the way to think about the Google offerings that we'll have is we will be, or we are moving onto Google Cloud, and the idea is that to the extent that you want to use Google Cloud services, they'll be available, and to the extent that you don't want to, you know, there's no, you know, it's an option. The one thing I do want to sort of foreshadow, both with TPUs and GPUs, is at the moment everything on Kaggle kernels is free. We have a very limited number of GPUs for now, and we will have a limited number of TPUs. We will be able to make that an unlimited number eventually, but unfortunately, we're going to have to pass through costs. So Kaggle kernel, you know, our aim with Kaggle kernels, or our early thinking, is that it will be free for about a laptop's worth of compute, and then there will be some charge associated with using the accelerators. So TPUs and GPUs, most likely.
Thanks. So the next question from Paweł Jankiewicz. There was a platform for smaller projects where Kagglers could work more as consultants or freelancers. I know you resigned from this idea many years ago. Is it still in the roadmap?
Yeah, this one's interesting. It's something I want to do. We've tried it twice now on an experimental basis, and in both times, I would say it was modestly successful. So once we did it many years ago, probably about 2013, and then we actually started experimenting with it a little bit towards the end of last year. And just for others, the idea is to connect companies with elite data scientists from our community. Google has a lot of customers approaching Google and saying, hey, we'd love to work with a Google engineer on this problem, and Google doesn't have enough machine learning engineers to help all the Google Cloud customers. In fact, Google sort of very often is not in a position to help at all. And so there is a nice opportunity here to match Google customers with people from the community, and I absolutely love the idea. I think that Kaggle profiles already get people jobs. Hopefully get people consulting gigs off Kaggle. I'm very excited about the possibility of giving our community, I guess more opportunities, right? Consulting opportunities. I think it's going to take a serious amount of effort to get this off the ground in a meaningful way. We're a relatively small team, and so we need to wait until as you've heard from our roadmap, we have a lot of things coming. So it's something that I definitely want. I think we have a good sense for what it would take, but I want to wait until we have the focus on it to be able to do it in a meaningful way. And so it's something that is in the air as an idea we definitely want to tackle. It's not something we have planned at the moment.
Okay, thanks. So I've got another question from Abhishek. Recently, there was an issue with Kaggle accounts and the cryptocurrency website. Was the user data, including password, compromised? To be more secure for future, does Kaggle have plans to introduce two-factor authentication?
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't familiar with the issue, what happened was a company called Numa.ai basically offered $500 worth of their cryptocurrency to Kaggle users that signed up for their site and put a certain URL on their profile page. That caused us to get a tremendous amount of hacking attempts on the site, on our site, and so people who had passwords that were part of other breaches, or who had weak passwords, found that their accounts had been broken into. We've got a bunch of security and privacy things that are currently underway. We certainly want to encourage people to use single sign-on rather than username and password as one example. I'm not sure that we're going to do two-factor auth. It's not something currently on the roadmap, but it's we're working with we have quite a close relate. Google has an excellent security and privacy team, so we're working closely to prioritize the security features that we roll out, and two-factor auth is not currently one of them that is being worked on.
Okay, thanks. So another question from Onodira. I think Data Science Bowl 2018 two-stage competition was a little bit hard. I mean, the test data is much different from train. I agree with two-stage competition. How about giving us information that explains how test data differs from train data?
Yeah, I'm not close enough to that competition to be able to comment directly. I think going forward, I forgot to mention this, with competitions, what we're probably going to do, and this is not a direct answer to that question, but what we're probably going to do is divide up competitions into self-service and featured competitions. And so we're hoping to have a lot of the research competitions end up being self-service, and then have our team spend much more time on a selection of the highest, the largest competition. That'll allow us to spend more time on each competition we launch, and the ones we launch, not the self-service ones, will be the ones with points attached. So sometimes, coming back to this specific question, sometimes it's desirable to have a training set and a test set that have a different distribution. Sometimes it's an error and not ideal. I'm not close enough to this year's data science bowl to know whether it was the right decision and something that we did intentionally, or whether it was, just happened to be the case and we didn't catch it.
Okay, thanks. So now we have two questions from Kamil Kaczmarek. So the first one, are you going to introduce competitions that are not only about maximizing LB score, but also about solution simplicity, interpretability of the pipeline, or script running time?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is the kind of thing that becomes possible with kernels competition. So really, for now, the focus is starting to shift to a world where kernels competitions have better support. I think that in some cases we can imagine the kinds of competitions we can run once we have better support for kernels competitions, and in some cases, this suggestion is related to what I said about constrained compute competitions, but I think there are all sorts of interesting configurations that are possible. I think that code simplicity is probably a little bit subjective for us. We like competitions to be objective, so that if you didn't finish in first place, you know why. Like it's not, oh, that's not fair, that was someone's subjective judgment. So it's probably the case that unless there's an objective way to do code complexity, which I'm suspicious of, we'll probably get proxy measures like compute execution time.
Thanks. And now it's the second question from Kamil. Are you going to introduce mentions, like add user, in the discussions?
We have it. We have that mentions. We launched it maybe 3 weeks ago.
Okay, great.
So the one addition that I think will make it more usable is automated completion. So that makes it that I don't think we've put in yet, but that'll make it more useful. But yeah, you've probably noticed that we have notifications now on the top right, and you can @mention users, which is very cool. Well, I think it's cool.
Okay. The next question from Mohamed. With Kiva's Just competition that just ended, and now the second Donors Choose competition, we're seeing more competitions about data science for good. What are the plans for that going forward? Are collaborations with NGOs in the roadmap for the short-term future?
Yeah, I mean, look, competitions with NGOs have always been something we've liked to do. It's easier to do now that we're part of Google. I mean, Google, we have less, I guess, commercial concerns is probably the way to put it now that we're part of Google, which gives us more flexibility to do projects with people like Kiva and Donors Choose. So yeah, it's probably easier for us to do those projects now that we're part of Google. The other thing I do want to mention is you probably noticed those competitions are not objectively judged, right? They are qualitative competitions. That is one thing that we're experimenting with at the moment. Should we, as well as part of kernels only competition, should we start to do more kind of qualitative competitions? Some of you who have been on Kaggle for a long time will know that we have tried this a few times many years ago with GE, and I would say it wasn't terribly successful. And by comparison, the Kiva competition, and so far it looks like the Donors Choose competition as well, have been extremely popular, and the quality of work has been really interesting. I think Kiva thought the results were, they got a lot out of the results, and so it is possible that we will also add in qualitative competitions, although I don't think we'll give ranking points for them.
Okay, we are 2 to go. So the question from Sergey Makarevich. Any plan for Kaggle as freelance platform?
Yeah, so that's Pavel's question. It's something I want to do. For the reasons I said, I would love to give our community more opportunities to, not just get jobs from their Kaggle profiles, but also consulting opportunities. So it's something we want to do. It's not currently something that is on the plans. So yeah, hopefully, hopefully we get there though. I really want to.
Thanks. And the last question from Jifan. Will Kaggle extend support for people to learn and perhaps compete using scalable data engineering toolsets such as Spark or Hadoop, or perhaps a specific competition using data pipeline and online learning?
Yeah, again, kernels competitions give us much more flexibility here. So one kind of competition we can do is very large. It's very hard to get huge data sets onto lots of people's computers, right? It's much easier to take the code to the data than the data to the code. And so there is the possibility of us running, once we have kernels competitions really well supported, there is the possibility of hosting competitions on very large data sets. The one problem is who pays for the compute, right? It seems not very fair, and this is a problem for kernels-only competitions across the board, but that we need to solve. But in particular, when very large data sets are involved, we need to find a way, probably to charge the customer our customer to subsidize the compute for people competing. That's the one big issue that we need to solve. But that can get extremely expensive for a customer because Kaggle has nearly 1.8 million users. It's a lot of users. And if we get a couple of thousand people in a competition, that's a lot of users to subsidize compute for. So we in order to run very large competitions on very large data sets, we'll need to solve that. As far as Hadoop and those sort of things, Google Cloud has a service called Dataproc that has Hadoop and Spark and all that stuff. So we will once we're better integrated with Google Cloud, have the ability to use all that stuff from Kaggle kernel. So the technical ability will be there. We just need to figure out the economic model. And then online learning. I think I mentioned that before, but that's a nice feature of kernels as well. That we should be, in theory, be able to host competitions, with online learning related competition.
Okay, Anthony, these were all the questions we had for you. So do you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so one final thing before I say goodbye. I think I said this in the intro video I sent yesterday, that I've always wanted Kaggle to do a conference, a user conference. The reason we've never done it is it's a huge amount of work. So thank you, Pavel and Maria, for all the work they've put into this. So yeah, just a quick round of applause for Pavel and Maria.
Anthony, thank you very much for your presentation and the answers, and applause for Anthony.
See you, everyone, and I'm planning to pop on tomorrow for the presentation of the competition results. So see you then.
See you. Bye.